Okay, thank you so much for everyone for joining me for yet another Countdown to Classic interview. Lucky enough to be sitting here with a member of the Classic team, someone I've been absolutely busting to talk to. You've all seen him around lately, and here he is. Aggrend, mate, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Josh.
Mate, time is of the essence here. I've got to whiz through this stuff, so, it's not personal, but it's going to be pretty quick. Mate, let's start with the fun and fuzzy stuff that'll warm you up through this one. Look, you really have come to the forefront quite recently when I hadn't heard of you. You've been there for years. Many of the player base wasn't sure of your work, and boom, here's Aggrend with all these amazing blue posts, and you're kind of the tip of the spear in more recent times. Mate, you're a producer. It's funny because my first job out of college I was actually, not many people know this, I was a TV producer. So I kind of know the deal, but I don't know anything about
Yeah,
video game production. Mate, really
yeah.
quick, just let people know, what is it that you do on a daily basis?
That's an interesting question. Producers, I imagine if it's anything like TV, which I'm pretty sure it is, it's a little bit of a lot of things. Mostly, kind of my day to day is really just sort of facilitating what the team needs, getting them any roadblocks they have, getting those unblocked for them so that they can, kind of produce the best. Output for us. I also work a lot with scheduling. I create, enter the tasks, populate our backlog, run our sprints and sprint planning and things like that. It's a lot of basically project management is the kind of thing. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. It's kind of the whatever you need to be person. If someone having a bad day, they need a hot cocoa, I'll do that for them. If someone's if they're like, man, I just need to get a hold of somebody from this other team to help me fix this bug, I go and I hunt that person down and I make sure they can make time to help my engineer or my designer, just things like that.
Too easy, mate. Well, look, like I mentioned, you really have been, I've been very, very complimentary of you on the podcast as of late. I'm not sure. I know you've heard the podcast from time to time. I'm not sure if you've heard those comments, but I'm happy to repeat them now. As far as I'm concerned, you've been brilliant. You've been the communication point that the classic community has been calling out for as of late. Now, without kissing your butt too much, I just want to ask the question, where did this all come from? Because like I said, you did kind of come out of nowhere. And at what point internally was the decision made, hey, let's shove Aggrend out there to the wolves? Sometimes we've gotten a little bit of a how do you do fellow gamers vibe from the classic team, but I don't get that impression from you. I really truly feel you're one of us. So, mate, where did this all come from?
I want to really take a moment to say that it's not me. It's really not. Like, it's the whole team. We talk about this an enormous amount, and how much we want to talk about things. It's honestly, for a lot of us, it's a time thing. We're so busy all the time. We're trying to deliver content to you. We're trying to ship the expansions and patches and things like that. That it's really difficult to pin down that time. But we all collectively together kind of have made the decision, really. Especially, I mean, this is not new, by the way. I've been posting, Brian's been posting. We've done a lot of things throughout, even since the original classic beta. And obviously it's kind of sporadic based on what's going on with the game and how busy we are. But we made a conscious decision that we really wanted to try and explain kind of what's happening behind the scenes. We want to kind of show a little bit of how the sausage is made, if that makes sense, and talk about, if something doesn't go according to plan, we really want to kind of try and explain that and make it. It's difficult because it's a lot of words to get that out, and it's a lot of effort to kind of craft those, but we feel it's really important. And it's a lot of times it's me posting, but it's kind of a group effort for us to put those words together. And that big long post, any of the big long posts I've made recently, it's usually me going and talking to people and is this correct, is this accurate, is this kind of the way we want to word this. I spend almost a lot of time every day talking to people like Kai Vax, our community manager, and people on the community team about, hey, what's a good thing for us to talk about right now? What's a good thing for us to what questions are people asking that we can give meaningful answers to? And we do the best we can. It's tough because we make the game too, so it's like we're kind of getting pulled in a lot of directions a lot of times. So we do the best we can. But I really want to stress, it's not me. It's the whole team. I don't know. I'm the guy. I was sort of half a writer before, so I kind of just ended up falling into it. And that's how a lot of the team works, is you kind of, people take on the things that they really want to do and they're really passionate about.
I appreciate that, mate. Your media training is shining through. There's no I in team. I love it. But look, you don't need to say anything. Let me say again, just to your face personally, keep doing what you're doing. You are doing a brilliant job. Appreciate that the whole Classic team is doing great work. Now, mate, that's the easy stuff. I buttered you up enough. Let's get to the more meaty stuff. Sure. Look, you guys dropped some bombshells on us via other interviews today, about the loot news and everything that everyone's going to be discussing now for the next couple of weeks. Bit of a very fresh news and a bit of a hard one to kind of really put to you now. But in this initial phase, let me just say, you personally were really pushing hard on the eye level changes over the last few weeks, really floating this out there to the community, trying to get some feedback and make it a discussion amongst us about what we would like to see and the little tweaks that we could make. And it all seemed to be based around the premise of keeping older content relevant for longer, which I think is a fantastic premise. Don't get me wrong. But then we got this one today. Now, I haven't really had the time to gauge the reaction too much. It seems generally positive. There's a little tiny bit of pushback. I'm not too sure as to the extent of it. But was this your baby, the new loot news, or how did the discussions come up in the team? Tell me why you have done this.
Yeah, so one of the things we really liked about Burning Crusade and Classic is sort of there's no real previous tier obsolescence. All of the content sort of maintains some form of relevance throughout the experience, and that's something that a lot of us play in a guild together. Chris Zierhut, who gave that interview, he's in my guild in Classic, and we get together and we kind of talk a lot about this stuff. Brian's also in the guild. He raided through us all with us all through Classic. Actually, I think most of the teams in the guild at this point. Anyway, doesn't matter. We get together and we talk about this stuff a lot, and it's like it just seemed like one of the most fun things and one of the most the easiest ways for even our guild to recruit is doing old content, doing pug runs and things like that. And through doing those, we've met new people, we've been able to recruit, and it's one of those things that during the Wrath of the Lich King development process, at a certain point, we hit a point where that kind of hard decision was made, where the developers at the time said, the current raid is the raid you focus on. Everything else is just it's not really a focus. It's not, we want to like focus your experience, and that's totally fine. That's a completely fine thing. But that's sort of been the modern model for a really long time until like season 4 in Shadowlands too, which is really interesting. But we really like that a part of Classic and a part of the first 2 expansions of Classic was or the first release in the expansion was that you had that like reason to go back. There was always those chase items. There was always things that made them interesting. Now, we don't want you to toil away in the old content or anything like that. And especially, really, it's Ulduar is the specific focus in terms of the item level change in Ulduar. Is we just want to give that a little bit more life. Because we have the data. We know that a lot of people didn't really get to experience Ulduar, at least not fully. And we've talked about this in other communications. I've talked about it in a blue post that we made, that for a lot of people kind of coming from Wrath, Naxxramas into Ulduar, it was just such a huge step up that a lot of people kind of just petered out on it and skipped it. And so we just want to make sure that it has the time to breathe. But we don't want to make you slave away in it for months and months and months, or too many months and months and months. It's just really just giving it a little nudge to do that. And in terms of like the kind of the idea and floating ideas, we as a team think that's really important now. We don't really want to make a ton of decisions in a vacuum. We really want to try and float things. We want to try and get it out there. And even these proposed loot changes with like the heroic dungeons and stuff, that's going to go to a PTR and we're going to get testing. Yeah. And people are going to give us feedback. And if you hate it, we won't do it. It's pretty much that simple.
Mate, I'll squeeze a little harder just on this one before we move on, because I don't necessarily agree with some of the feedback that's come through, but just to throw some of it at you, I'm sure you've read the comments already. You're so good at floating around through the community and finding this stuff. But we see things like, Classic players balking at the term of Heroic Plus. And Heroic Plus, it sounds like Mythic Plus. What's going on? And then, so I get that there's a difference in everything, but my question would be more that, You guys have been very specific about wanting Classic to be a very different product to retail.
Yeah, for
Do you
sure.
find that? Do you find that this crosses the streams a little bit? Is it on purpose to try and appeal to the retail crowd a little bit?
Yeah,
What do you think?
not at all. Really, what it is, it's actually that one of the problems with one of the challenges, I guess, with Wrath content is that because the initial launch heroics never really changed throughout the course of the expansion, by the time you get to the end, it's just a face roll. It's just a thing you do to go in and get badges. You don't think about it. There's no thought to it. It's not particularly engaging. You know, the objective isn't really to bring it closer to modern WoW. It's really to give this content a little bit more teeth, just so has a little bit more longevity. It's not also a Mythic Plus system. It's not going to scale in difficulty forever or anything like that. And it's much lighter touch than that. And I don't really want to dwell on this too much, because I think it sort of belabors the point for a thing you haven't even seen yet. The best way for you guys to experience it and give us feedback on it is we need to get it on a PTR and you need to look at it. And we're still probably some weeks or months away from that. So,
Yep,
you
perfect.
know,
No, that was my last
yeah,
question on it. All good, mate. Let's
yeah,
move on. Look, and I do apologize for the breakneck pace at which we're moving, mate. You know how these things go.
I
We've only got
understand.
30 minutes. Yeah.
Yep.
We'll do the friendlier conversation maybe another time later down the track. Look, mate,
For sure.
here's the next question is about the really difficult decision it must have been, perhaps for you more personally than the rest of the team, about the fresh servers that were wound up recently with, you had the Sky Fury thing, you had the Thakal thing, and you guys really, really wanted to wait out or see how those queues went. In the
Yeah.
end, your hand was kind of forced, and you rolled out that blue post saying we don't want to do multiple servers because one might turn Horde, one might turn Alliance, and then a week later you kind of had to roll out more servers. How did you put? Because you're the one that's got your name attached to those posts, mate, and a lot of people sort of
Sure.
were having a bit of a tongue-in-cheek laugh, going like, "Oh, here we go. It only took a week to roll over on that one." How do you feel about that decision, that difficult decision to now roll out more fresh servers?
Yeah, it's challenging. There's a lot of things that sort of good intention and your best hopes sometimes collide forcefully with reality. I think that's really what it is. And I think that the to talk about the decision to open additional fresh servers, you kind of have to look at it in terms of like we had FCM destinations, free character move destinations for things like Benediction and Fairlina and Globulus. But the Sky Fury just didn't have any options. Thekel didn't have any options, and that felt really bad. And it was something that, yeah, I think in a perfect world we'd have one. That is the perfect number for fresh servers, especially PvP servers. I think that's the right number. But it was too much. It was too many queues, and we wanted to give a relief valve. And we also kind of discovered we got a lot of feedback internally and externally from people that said, "Hey, I don't care. I don't want to go where the people are. I just want to roll fresh. I want to level. I dragged my feet making a character, and now I'm basically locked out of it. Can you give me another option?" And it's like, you know what? Yes, we can. And surprisingly, one of the things we've looked at is it hasn't really impacted faction balance. It's not had the impact that I personally and the team was really afraid of. So lesson learned there. That's good news. I'm happy to be wrong about these kinds of things, especially if it's good for the game and it's good for the people who just want to get in and play.
Real quick, I don't want to linger on it, but hypothetically, if Wrath launched, the Thanos snapping happens and half of those people disappear on the fresh servers, is a server merger absolutely not an option, or is it something that we hate doing it, but maybe?
I wouldn't say it's not an option. It's hard to say. Like trying to give any kind of prediction about server population or anything like that is really difficult because I don't have a crystal ball. I can't exactly tell you what specifically is going to happen with server population, the migratory patterns of players. You know what I mean? But I think. I think that there's nothing off the table, and we're pretty committed to not only not letting servers die, even though the term "dead server" is a bit of a loaded term and it's
Oh,
a
I
little
hate it.
bit
I hate it.
hyperbolic. I just like you, I too play on a mid pop server that is beautifully functional. So but people have their own definition of what is a healthy server environment, and I respect that.
Yep.
But yeah, we're we're going to do the right thing for people. We don't want to make dead servers, and at this point, we definitely don't want to make mega servers.
Fair
So
enough.
we're gonna continue looking at this hour to hour, day to day.
All right, mate. You said the magic word, mega servers. Let's change tact and go down that
Sure.
garden path. This is where the really hard stuff comes up. Um, Look, while you and I are out there appreciating the country air on our smaller servers, the mega server has become a huge issue. You guys
Sure.
have done things recently to create new servers for people
Mm-hmm.
to move on over to populate sulfurous and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, faction caps has been an option that's come up for you guys. And Brian mentioned that you were watching very, very intently, almost to the
Mm-hmm.
hour, how the factions were moving on these transfers and
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Yep.
The hard question, mate, is why now are we looking at faction
Yeah.
caps and monitoring that so tightly as opposed to everything that happened before?
Yeah, to be clear, we're not capping factions, and we're very against faction specific queues, and that's for a pretty functional reason. We don't want to get into a situation where one faction functionally is unable to play because the rate of the opposing faction logging in does not exceed the rate at which the queuing faction logs out, and that's a very real possibility, and that's something we're pretty apprehensive about. What it is we've now enabled faction specific FCMs, and that's kind of how we're trying to manage that, is allowing people to go. Say if, like, for example, we did it for Sulfurous, where Sulfurous was about 60-40 Horde to Alliance, and that's perfectly healthy. And we're not, by saying, okay, Alliance can continue to transfer to Sulfurous or Horde. I'm sorry, I can't remember which was the majority one. I look at so many realms all the time, it gets confusing. But we didn't want to say, we're not trying to telegraph like, oh no, we need more Alliance. It's mostly of like, we could probably let a few more people on, and we prefer them to be Alliance, so go. But in terms of the larger question of faction balance, that's something we talk about an enormous amount. Early on, we had a philosophy of, we didn't really want to restrict where people went. And I mean, honestly, from our perspective, we didn't really feel like people cared that much about. I mean, it's something that gets talked about a lot, but I often kind of joke that everyone wants faction balance and everyone wants really good fights that they win every time. And most faction imbalance problems can kind of be traced to like one bad night in Blackrock Mountain. It sounds like a joke, but it's kind of the truth. Like, we have a lot of anecdotal stories in the office about like, well, this was a perfect server, and then somebody got locked out of BRM, and then it's not anymore. So we didn't really want to restrict people early on, and say you can't go here, you can go here. But I think at this point we're looking at it a lot closer in terms of hey, the rubber has hit the road, and there are definitely some issues here, and we want to, the not wanting to restrict people's freedom to move around different places is getting in the way of a good experience. And we talk about the faction balance issue a lot, and we're thinking of a lot of different design decisions and design tweaks we can make to potentially incentivize the minority faction. There's a lot to unpack there, and there's a lot to experiment with, and we're going to talk about it a lot more, I think, in the coming weeks and months, as we sort of those ideas become a little less half-baked.
Okay, mate. Well, you just mentioned not wanting to restrict people's movement. So I just asked a
Mm-hmm.
question about why now. Here comes the question
Yeah,
about why later, because I want to bring you
yeah.
to the topic of faction transfers. And you guys have
Mm-hmm.
said this is something that you want to do, but
Mm-hmm.
not yet. Now, you guys have been very hard on the impression of, play with your friends has been a very big ethos of the
Yeah,
classic team. You just mentioned in your own words just then not wanting to restrict player movement. It's something you
yeah,
really fight yourselves in doing. But then
yeah.
we've got this hard statement of, oh no, we'll give you faction transfers, but later, not now. Why?
Well, we've had them on at various points. We have them disabled now. I can't really get into too much details. We had an issue that caused us to need to disable faction transfers that were we had enabled faction specific free transfers. Those should be coming back soon on the realms that we determine need them. In terms of like the massive imbalance realms, though, if that's what you're asking about, I don't know. Like, even opening, say, okay, all Fairlena Horde can move to a Benediction Alliance, and Benediction Alliance can go to Fairlena Horde. I'm not sure how many people would take those, but we're certainly open to trying it. It's something we just need to look at. And like, once we're sort of out of the woods with all these things, and the launch is behind us, I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to look at if that's something that people would be interested in.
Okay, mate, I'd love to dive deeper, but we don't have time for it. I'm letting you
Sure.
off the hook. But let's get into maybe the toughest question. This is where I say I'm letting you off the hook, but then I'm sort of really throwing you in the fire on this one.
Sure.
Here's the tough one. Here's where I've got to play a bit of the bad guy. Look, it might not even be a bad guy moment. I might just be confused. But mate, you put out a blue post about this. We talked about the server queues, and people have been asking, where did the server queues go? Where did the servers queue that go? They magically disappeared about a week ago, from 10, 12, 14,000 people sitting in queues on some servers to just bang. They woke up one morning and they were gone. Now, Brian was interviewed about this on Warcraft Reloaded, and he cited three very important factors. Obviously, you guys have been offering free character transfers. People have been taking you up on that. The Sulfurous success story is a wonderful example of that. You guys go through a massive bot ban wave, which is fantastic. We get these huge bot bans around the launch of an expansion. I have to still pat you on the back for that. That's great. We'll get into more of that maybe another time. But then the third factor was the interesting one, because you put it, this is going to be a long question, sorry, mate. I know we're running out of time. You put out a blue post on September 7th saying the following. So put as plainly as possible, we cannot increase capacity anymore without inviting additional and likely cascading failures to the service. At present, the best and only way to resolve the issues for the impacted realms is for people to leave the realm via free transfers. There's no technology solution to this. There is no hardware solution to this. We believe the time has come to end the concept of a mega realm. So that's basically you saying, look, technologically, we can't ease these queues. Then Brian does this interview, and he says the following when asked about server queues disappearing after first discussing the things that I mentioned. He says, our server engineers are working on the back end to try to find little ways to optimize and improve things too. It's often not something where you can make a huge slam dunk, but they're looking for every little bit that they can eke out so that they can raise the realm cap as much as possible without it kind of falling over. So they are working really hard to increase the capacity as well. Now, mate, I'm not trying to be a dick here, but you can understand that to the layman, those two statements seem to contradict one another. So what's the go?
Absolutely. I think, and I'm not trying to backpedal what I said, because what I said is true. What I was getting at with that is more of, for the immediate problem we have for the queues as they were a few weeks ago, and the launch, which, by the way, the queues are probably going to be just as bad at launch, if not worse. For that immediate problem, there aren't really technology solutions, not in enough to move the needle to where it needs to be. Using Benediction as an example, Benediction had at one point, it hasn't been that way for a little while now, but at one point it had as many people in queue as the server could hold. So it doubled the number of people wanted to play on Benediction at one time than could. The big problem we have is there's no real like lever pulling or knob turning we can do that will ameliorate that level of demand on the service. Now, what Brian was referring to specifically is there were minor tweaks that the server team was able to discover with specific services and servers. A WoW server is a variety of servers. It's a global server, world server, user server. They all do different things. And a lot of those things control how the client and the server talk to each other, and all those messages that go back and forth, and how it connects to the database, and all these different things. And what he was referring to is they found a minor optimization, and it did allow us to raise the server caps a very marginal amount. When I say marginal, when he said it too, marginal, it's hundreds, not thousands. And what we needed at the time that it was the worst was thousands, at times tens of thousands. So what he said is totally true, and I believe it's still congruent with what I said, because really, if the queues come back to the degree that they have been, that little optimization will not be enough. But as to the other factors and why they just disappeared, it was a combination of things. It was that minor optimization was the lowest factor. We did do a ban wave. We have some kind of cheeky stuff for Wrath. I wish I could tell you the code name of the project for the bot detection and banning we're doing it, because it's really funny, but I can't. But I will say it's very good. It's very interesting new technology and techniques that we're sort of developing and deploying, and have been very effective. Now, obviously, this is kind of an arms race. These things go back and forth, but for now, it's pretty effective. And as those realms become locked, And as those realms, they fill up, they're locked, no new characters can be created. If a bot account gets banned, it can't just come back. So that is one benefit of locking realms, is that ends up happening. And the other thing too that oftentimes gets overlooked, that's not easy to really detect on the player side, is that whenever realms start to hit a lower Q level, it actually has almost a snowballing effect on the total amount on the queue length, in a downward effect almost, because what ends up happening is, say I have I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to wait in this 12-hour queue. I'm going to do the most, go to the most egregious length I can to stay online. I'm going to, the proverbial Simpsons, the bird on the keyboard,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like, people will do anything like that to stay online. But once the queue starts to abate, they're like, oh, I don't really need to. I can wait in an hour queue. That's fine. I can wait in a 2-hour queue. That's not that big of a deal. So they stop doing that stuff. And then what that does is that gets a player that's not actually playing really offline and lets someone else come in. And we have methods to kind of detect that and kick people off, but players are creative, they're going to find ways around things like that. So that has an impact too. So it's really just, it's a broad swath of things. I think the last thing too is, you can only farm so much honor. You can only farm so much, level 2, so many alts before you're like, all right, I'm going to take a break for the real game. And there was a degree of that too. I spend a lot of time looking at the numbers every day, looking at this, like the server populations and the total number of not just people in the game world, but attempted connections. And that number has, it's dipped off a little bit, because people are starting to, they're starting to kind of take breaks. A lot of people have, like I said, capped out on honor and really kind of accomplished their goals
All good.
for pre-patch.
Mates, look, I'm sitting here with a wry smile on my face because you're doing very well, because you've avoided via time restrictions the 35 follow-up questions that I had for you from what you just said. Look, I've got you for about 90 more seconds. Let's get the last one in. Look, I can't be stupid enough to ask you about Cataclysm. I know what the canned response is going to be to that. Let's not talk about whether that's happening or not. But in the hypothetical situation that you did go down that avenue, right? Forget confirming anything. We're not fucking confirming anything right now. If Cataclysm Classic existed, are you not concerned about creating 3 player bases now, in terms of retail lovers, classic lovers, and then this weird in-between crowd that's ready to go to Cataclysm, whereas there was enough concern about creating 2 player bases as a schism. Now you're potentially doing 3. So the question is, what's on offer for the classic Andes that you might leave behind if you do Cataclysm Classic? And this is a bit of a SOM reflection question. What's happening with the classic guys, the vanilla guys, the Season of Mastery guys? What's on the cards?
Totally. For one thing, I think anyone who's kind of followed SOM knows that it's really close, near and dear to our hearts, near and dear to my hearts in particular too. We love SOM, and we think it was actually a really great success. Like, it wasn't as large as Classic, it wasn't as large as Mainline, but it was, for what it was great. And the best part about SOM is we got to learn so much about what works with a vanilla server. If we're going to pull the levers a little bit on mechanical changes and boss changes and things like that, we kind of got a really good idea of what works and what doesn't. We also got a really good idea of what works in terms of timing and what doesn't work in terms of timing. So I think that I'm super excited. I think that's just what I'll say, is I'm very excited for the possibility of new classic, servers, new vanilla servers, new BC servers, new Wrath servers, whatever. Nothing is off the table. It's really like I'm going to give you the canned response and say that it's influenced by what players tell us they want, and that's what I'm hoping to get from this. There was a survey that may have theoretically leaked, and if you got that survey, tell us what you want.
Yeah, I might have helped leak that one. All right, mate, I'll let you get away with the media trained response, you bastard.
Yes,
that's all right.
sorry.
Look, mate, you did so well. Thank you so much. You've got to go to dinner, go do your thing. Look, keep pushing the higher ups, please, so that we can do a friendlier, longer chat. This is so weird. I know you hate it. I know I hate it in terms of how quick it's got to be. Mate, thank you so much. I know you've been listening to the show. Thank you so much for all that. You're a legend. Keep doing what you're doing, Aggrend.
Yeah, no problem. And tell AL I said sorry about the zombie play.
I will. He'll love that. Thanks, mate.
All right. See ya.
See you, mate.